What is up, everybody? My name's Ark, the tabletop Arcanist, and this is the Optimizer's Anvil, part of the Arcanist Forge network. Today I'm going to be talking about a build that's goal was to optimize a specific subclass. Sometimes we're not optimizing for pure power, instead we're optimizing to make the best thing that we can that fits a concept. I present the Dread Werewolf. This build's goal was to make the Path of the Beast Barbarian as good as humanly possible, which I'm really excited about because the Path of the Beast is one of my favorite subclasses in the game, mostly because it's an update of my favorite 3.5 prestige class, the Warshaper. And honestly, the subclass is really good. It just suffers from not having any synergy with Great Weapon Master and living in the shadow of the Bear Totem Barbarian, which is one of the most powerful subclasses in the game. However, when I forced myself to put aside those build crutches, I found that this class actually synergizes with a lot of other sort of sub-optimal things to create actually a very powerful and thematic build. And just taking optimal choices actually ends up making you play like a cursed werewolf, which I think is super awesome. As far as style goes, this build kind of straddles the line between being a DPR build and a Nova build, kind of being a jack of all melee trades without being a master of any. Versatile builds like this are really rewarding to play because you never really feel like you're at a loss in any encounter, so you feel useful all the time, which is always really fun. I'm gonna take off the gloves. I spent money on them, so I was gonna wear them the whole time to make them worth it, but they're already getting sweaty and weird, so I'm giving up. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get into this. For our race, I'm very excited to say our optimal option is actually the Long-Tooth Shifter. Long-Tooth Shifter allows you to use a bonus action to assume a wolf-human hybrid form. As part of this bonus action, you get to make a bite attack, which is an unarmed strike dealing 1d6 damage, adding your strength modifier. You also get 4 to 12 temporary hit points depending on your level. Additionally, every turn thereafter, you can use your bonus action to repeat the bite attack. This shift lasts for 1 minute, meaning it's going to last the entirety of most fights. This is actually kind of huge. It gives you a bonus action attack that you can add your modifier to, and that doesn't take up a hand to use. It's basically just like having a Frenzied Rage that doesn't have Great Weapon Master synergy, which is great for us plebs that aren't using heavy weapons. You can already see how this build is going to synergize well with things that don't see a lot of play because they don't synergize with the other best things in the game. For our ability scores, we're going to want to max strength and charisma. We are not a tank barbarian. We are a raging werewolf berserker, and so we're going to focus on damage output rather than defense stats. Next, we'll want 14 dex because we're going to rely on medium armor as opposed to our unarmored defense. And the rest of our points will be going into getting 12 con, which is pretty low, but is not that bad seeing as we're going to have a high health dice throughout our entire career. Equipment-wise, we're going to start off with a longsword, the best medium armor we can get, and a shield. For me, personally, just because I don't like the aesthetic of our werewolf carrying a physical shield, I feel like we should reskin it into like beefing up one arm of the armor, kind of like an old school RPG. Skills-wise, you're fairly open, but I would recommend taking athletics in case you ever want to grapple someone. For our class, we're going to jump into Barbarian because it's just incredible at early levels. During our rage, once we've shifted, we're going to get 2 attacks. One dealing 1d8 plus 5 damage due to our strength modifier and our rage damage, and the other dealing 1d6 plus 5 with our bonus action. We are also resistant to physical damage, and we have a really high AC because we were able to keep a shield in our offhand. All of this together is going to make us a really potent force at early levels, able to bully most enemies on the battlefield without taking too much damage in return. At level 2, we go Barbarian 2 and get Reckless Attack and Danger Sense. Danger Sense will give us advantage on dexterity-based saving throws, which is actually really great and allows us to get the most that we can out of our middling dexterity. Reckless Attack is something that you're going to want to think about with this build. Like I said, we're not using Great Weapon Master, so we're not suffering -5 to our attacks, which is why Reckless Attack is so amazing for those builds. For us, advantage helps, but it's not necessarily required. So take this situationally. Obviously your default is probably going to be to use it, but in situations where you're maybe surrounded by enemies and you know you're going to take a lot of hits, you don't suffer too much for not using it for a round. At level 3, we take our final level of Barbarian. Just like any other Barbarian, Path of the Beast peaks very early, which is why so many Barbarian subclasses make really great dips. From Path of the Beast, we get Form of the Beast. This allows us to alter our body when we rage in various ways. We can grow a bestial maw, which will give us some self-healing. We can grow a tail, which we can use defensively, and the most relative to us, we can grow claws. These claws deal 1d6 damage plus our strength bonus and count as simple weapons. Also, when we use the attack action using our claws, we get an extra attack in the same way that you would from the extra attack feature. That's right, we just got extra attack at level 3, putting us way above the curve of damage for most martials. All of our attacks are going to deal 1d6 damage plus 5. Against armor 10, we're going to deal 21 to 26 damage with or without reckless attack. Against armor 15, we deal 15 to 21 damage, and against armor 19, we deal 9 to 16. As you can see, at lower ACs, reckless attack doesn't matter as much, but as AC climbs, so does your need for reckless attacking. This is a really early damage spike, and the fact that we have roughly armor 19 depending on what kind of armor we've been able to scrounge up, and resistance to physical damage means that we are still really strong. We also get our third rage at this level, which means pretty much throughout our entire career, this build is going to have a 3-fight reach per day. Which isn't amazing, but it is pretty good for an A-tier build using a lot of suboptimal stuff. Next, we're going to jump into the bulk of our levels, which are actually going to be in Paladin. More specifically, the Oathbreaker Paladin, which has huge synergy with any melee build that attacks many times. So, at level 4, we're a Paladin 1. We get Divine Sense, which is useful for out-of-combat scouting, and we get Lay on Hands, which is actually going to be fairly amazing for us due to our low con. It gives you a well of healing equal to 5 times your Paladin level. You can basically use this as an extra health bar, popping all of that healing into yourself whenever you get low. Remember though, you can also break up this healing whenever you want, so I would always keep like 1 or 2 points available in case one of your allies goes down and you just need 1 point to get them up from being unconscious. At level 5, Paladin 2, we get Divine Smite. Divine Smite allows us to burn a spell slot when we hit with an attack, adding 1d8 times that spell slot's level plus 1d8 to that attack's damage. So each of our first level spell slots can be burned to add 2d8 damage to an attack. This is where this class's Nova potential comes from. If we want, we can apply this smite to a single round of attacks, adding roughly 18 damage to that round, which is a lot at this level. However, it should be noted that while your claws count as simple weapons, your bite does not. Even though Rules as Written states that unarmed attacks are melee weapon attacks and Smite works off of melee weapon attacks, there has been some sage advice columns that seem to contradict this. So some DMs that favor Rules as Intended over Rules as Written may not allow you to smite with your bite attack, just keep that in mind. We also get spell casting, but our spells are largely going to be spoken for in our smites. That being said, I always take Command. Command is just a really good spell, and you're going to have high charisma, so you may as well take a couple things in case of a situation where you can't rage or just something weird comes up. Finally, at this level, we get a fighting style, and honestly, we have a pretty tough choice. There are 3 amazing styles that you can choose from, all of which are pretty equally useful. The first is blind fighting, which feels very thematic for a werewolf, but it's fairly situational unless we have a party member that is a fan of using the darkness spell. The second style we could take is the defensive fighting style, which will put our AC up to 20, which is honestly usually my pick. However, there's one fighting style that I think will be really useful throughout our career because we are a pure melee attacker. And that is the Divine Warrior fighting style, which will allow us to take some cleric cantrips. Like I said before, we're going to have high charisma, so we're going to be able to use Toll the Dead fairly effectively. We'll use this in situations where we're unable to rage or we're unable to make melee contact with an opponent. For our early levels, this is kind of going to be our only way to take down flying enemies, or to take out enemies who have some sort of intervening object between us that we cannot pass. So, because it adds so much to our versatility and eliminates a lot of situations where we'll be useless, I think this is the fighting style I would go with personally. That being said, any of these fighting styles are great depending on your situation. Going into level 6, we are a Paladin 3. We get Divine Health, which makes us immune to disease, which is nice but doesn't come up that often. More importantly, we get our Sacred Oath, which we're going to just break immediately, making us an Oathbreaker. Storyline-wise, perhaps we've broken an oath long in the past, resulting in our infusion with dark energy. Personally, I like to think that our werewolf was in charge of protecting something important, but failed, thus leaving them with an unresolved quest that you can work out in your campaign. Also, the DMG states that you need to be evil to take this class, but I urge all DMs to completely ignore this. I personally don't think it's ever a good idea to limit our players to a specific alignment or like a specific culture like with the Blade Singer, because it just limits their ability to make something unique to them, and I don't think that's ever a good idea in Dungeons & Dragons. If they want to be a good character, perhaps they're just cursed, which could play exactly the same way as an Oathbreaker does. In-game, we get access to Hellish Rebuke and Inflict Wounds, which are, both of them not really that great. In addition, we get Channel Divinity, and we get two really fantastic uses of it. The first is Control Undead, which allows us to force an undead of challenge rating lower than our Paladin level to make a Wisdom saving throw. If they fail, they are forced to be under our control for 24 hours. This is a wildly strong necromantic ability to get this early in the game. Even necromancer wizards have to wait till level 14 until they can do this. At level 3, there's already a slew of powerful monsters that we could have under our control, such as an ogre zombie. Also, for those of you who are about to say, "But Ark, doesn't the control monster ability look at character level? Why aren't we looking at level 5 monsters to control?" I asked the same question. The rule specifically states an undead of challenge rating equal to or greater than the Paladin's level is immune to this effect. Rules as written, that could go either way. Thankfully, Jeremy Crawford, one of the designers of the game, has clarified that this specifically refers to the Paladin's Paladin level, not their total level. So because that is the closest thing we have to an official ruling, I'm going to go with that interpretation of the rules. For the purposes of this video, I am not going to assume that you have an undead minion under your control. It's just too DM dependent and too campaign dependent to ever predict what kind of damage you'll be able to get out of this ability. Just be aware that while you have it active, it's going to be a pretty major boost to your DPR, especially at higher levels where you could really control some incredibly powerful things. Your second channel divinity will fill in the gaps when this one is not available. Dreadful Aspect will force enemies in a radius around you to take a wisdom saving throw or become frightened of you. They can't retake their save until they're 30 feet away from you, making this a very useful tanking tool to peel enemies away from your backline. This is a solid ability, but not nearly as good as Control Undead, so focus on that when you can. At level 7, Paladin 4, we just get an ASI and we're going to pump it into Strength. At level 8, Paladin 5, we get 3 major damage boosts. The first is simple. We get extra attack, meaning we can now claw 3 times in a round. The second is that we get second level spell slots to smite with, but those slots may be spoken for due to our third damage boost. This comes in the form of Find Steed and the spell Aid. Find Steed is going to allow us to summon a fiendish warhorse. This mount has high intelligence and can communicate with you telepathically. Now, we are not really in need of a mount. Rather, we're just going to summon our horse and have it fight alongside of us. According to Jeremy Crawford, the beast has all of its normal actions when not being controlled in combat. So you can just kind of treat it as a concentration-less summon, which is just fantastic. But it's probably going to require that you burn your highest level spell slot most of the time on Aid because it is not very beefy at all. With Aid, it's going to have 24 HP, plus 6 to hit, and its hooves are like greatswords. Additionally, if it charges an opponent and they fail a DC, it will knock them prone and also grant them an extra attack as it tramples them. Against an armor 10, alone the horse is going to do 10 to 21 damage depending on if they failed their DC or not. It will deal 7 to 17 damage against an armor 15, and 5 to 13 damage against an armor 19. That is a ton of extra damage for a spell that we can simply cast and forget about. Also, if you're a DM, please, for the love of Paylor, allow your player to reskin this warhorse as a giant warhorse-sized wolf. You don't have to change its stats at all, but it will just be so cool to watch your berserker werewolf charge into combat flanked by a 6-foot-tall lupine horror. Because there are so many variables for your DPR right now, what with your warhorse's weird trample ability and your ability to choose whether or not to reckless attack, I'm going to have to give you ranges for damage. The top end will be if everything goes right, if your opponent has failed their DC and the horse gets to attack twice and you're reckless attacking. The low end will be the opposite. It'll be your horse has only attacked once and you haven't reckless attacked. So against an armor 10, we are now dealing 45 to 60 damage per round. Woo! That's a lot of damage. For this level, that is a huge sum of damage even at the low end. Against an armor 15, we deal 32 to 52 damage per round, and against an armor 19, we deal 23 to 41. We also have 4 level 1 spell slots with which we can smite, which will add up to around 36 damage providing our DM allows the smite bite. At level 9 Paladin 6, we get Aura of Protection, which allows us to add our Charisma modifier to the saving throws of people within 10 feet of us, which is a huge boost seeing as our Charisma modifier is +3. At level 10 Paladin 7, we get another huge boost to DPR in the form of Aura of Hate. This gives us, along with any other fiends or undead within 10 feet of us, a bonus to their damage rolls equal to our Charisma modifier. Like I said, our warhorse is a fiend, so this will boost their damage in addition to our own. It will also boost any undead that we happen to be controlling. Now, just like with Divine Smite, I could see a DM maybe saying that this doesn't affect our bite attack. But that is much less likely due to the fact that there's no sage advice contradicting how this would be ruled as written. Also, it seems very much intended to affect various non-weapon attacks, such as demons' claws and bites, and undead's claws and bites, and things like that. So I feel pretty confident saying that this does affect our bite, it does affect our horse's hooves, and it does affect any non-weapon attacks that our undead might be making, providing they are melee weapon attacks, which is almost everything. This boosts our DPR to 60 to 77 against armor 10 opponents, 45 to 68 against armor 15 opponents, and 32 to 55 against armor 19. These are really solid numbers for a level 10 character. At level 11 Paladin 8, we get another ASI, which is going to boost our strength up to 20. At level 12 Paladin 9, we get our 3rd level spell slots, one of which we're going to pump into Aid to give our horse more health. The rest we can pump directly into smites. If we hit with all of our attacks and smite with all of them, it'll add roughly 59 damage to a round. However, at this point I would say maybe save one of your highest level spell slots if you have it available for a critical strike. We're going to be critting more often than the average paladin because we have access to reckless attack, so keeping that in mind can give you some really devastating rounds if you get lucky. At level 13 Paladin 10, we get Aura of Courage, which is going to give us and anyone within 10 feet of us immunity to the frightened condition. At level 14 Paladin 11, we get another huge DPR boost in the form of Improved Divine Smite. This will simply add 1d8 radiant damage to all of our attacks. And this is also the final time that I'm going to have to make this caveat. Again, it is a bit ambiguous whether or not this ability applies to our bite attacks. This ability specifically calls out weapons. It doesn't call out melee weapon attacks, it calls out attacks with melee weapons. This makes it kind of ambiguous whether or not a unarmed strike, which is a melee weapon attack, counts. Sage advice goes back and forth on this, basically saying that it was their intention to exclude unarmed attacks, but it's not really for a balance reason, it's for flavor reasons. Because I never want to overstate how much damage a build does, I'm going to say that this ability does not affect our bite attacks, but I think most DMs will be more lenient than that. Either way, it's a great ability. Against armor 10, it boosts us to dealing 78 to 96 DPR. Against armor 15, we deal 64 to 88 DPR, and against armor 19, we deal 48 to 75. This is really good damage at this level. Honestly, a B tier or even a low A tier would be really happy with this damage at level 20, and we're only level 14. At level 15, Paladin 12, we get another ASI, and we're going to pump our Charisma. At level 16, Paladin 13, we take our final Paladin level. This gives us a solid damage boost as far as reliability goes in the form of Find Greater Steed as opposed to Find Regular Steed. This spell is going to make our Wolfie companion significantly more durable, more useful in more situations, and also have more consistent DPR. Aesthetically, our giant wolf will sprout great demonic wings as it takes on the stat block of a griffin. There are many great stat blocks that you could pick with this spell, but I think the Griffin is the most useful for us. Paratons are, I think, more useful for a bard because they don't really have to ride them to be able to fight flying creatures, and saber-toothed tigers are land-bound. For our purposes, it's going to be great to use the Griffin as a flying mount if we need it, and to use it as a combatant if we don't. Our mount's health just jumped to 74 if we pump a 4th level aid into it. This is a huge quality of life thing because it means that our warhorse is now no longer going to be a prime target to cut down our DPR, which many of our smarter opponents are going to be doing. The Griffin also always attacks twice and doesn't have to rely on that weird charge ability. With the Griffin's aid, our DPR is now 93 to 97 against armor 10, 76 to 88 against armor 15, and 56 to 75 against armor 19. And if we decide to smite on all of our attacks, it's going to add roughly 68 damage to our DPR. And if we have the highest possible CR undead under our command at the time, it's going to add another 37 DPR to our round. All told up, if we decide to smite on every single round and our DM allows bite smite, we are going to deal 175 damage. At level 17, we finally jump out of Paladin and start honing our martial prowess by taking our first level of fighter. We get access to Second Wind, which is kind of a drop in the bucket compared to our lay on hands, and we also get access to a second fighting style. We're presented with pretty much the same choice as we were before, so just pick your second favorite option from back then. At level 18, Fighter 2, we get a huge boost to our Nova potential by adding Action Surge to our repertoire. This will allow us to strike 6 times in a single round. And before you say, but Ark, shouldn't it be 7 attacks? Unfortunately not. Your claw attacks only add an extra attack once a round, so when you action surge to do another attack action, it doesn't actually work. So you get 3 attacks with your action and only 2 attacks with your action surge action. Despite this, against an armor 19, this action surge round will deal 100 damage. And if our DM allows us to bite smite and we choose to smite on every single one of our attacks, we are going to deal 192 damage against that same armor 19.
Woo! That's a lot of damage.
At level 19, we take our fighter subclass and we're going to pick champion. This is an important subclass for us because it is going to allow us to crit fish even more effectively with our reckless attack. Our critical strike chance is now 19%. This makes our chance to critically strike at least once per round with our 4 attacks 57%. At this point, unless it makes a lot of strategic sense, we can stop doing mega smite rounds and just simply smite when we crit, which will be once every other round. Doing this boosts our DPR to 107 against armor 19 opponents while our 3rd level spell slots hold out. This is a really solid damage goal for a DPR build that doesn't really use any Apex build choices. It's crazy sometimes that when you force yourself away from the prescribed good stuff, that you can still find pathways towards powerful and useful builds. And it's also nice when a build really works well towards a theme. At level 20, we will simply take Barbarian 4, granting us an ASI, which we will pump into Charisma, making our final DPR against armor 19 foes 111 while those 3rd level spell slots hold out. However, before we finish out this build, I just want to present a build option for you. At early levels, our warhorse is going to be very vulnerable to death. Because of this, at any point at early levels, you can use an ASI to get Inspiring Leader. This will seriously boost your horse's survivability, and it'll also boost the survivability of your party members, which is really nice. Every party loves having an Inspiring Leader, it's just a great feat. If I'm being honest, I think this build has really overtaken all other in my heart as my favorite build. It's just really cool, and it seems like it's really fun to play. If my D&D character in my current campaign dies, there is a 99% chance that this is going to be what I play. I just love a build where every optimized choice oozes with flavor. It's just, what more could you ask for in a build? For DMs, I don't really think there's a lot to see here. This is kind of a middling A-tier build, but you do have a lot of choices as far as what you think constitutes rules as written and what constitutes rules as intended and how you want to play the build. Whatever you choose isn't really going to screw the build over one way or another, it's just going to be little buffs or nerfs here or there. My only caution would be to act with intention whenever Control Dead is on the field. Don't accidentally put yourself in a position where you've given your paladin a pet that is too strong. This build is less good at utilizing that ability than, say, a full Oathbreaker paladin, which could get like a demi-lich under its control, but just be aware that you're going to have some forethought if you're putting undead on the battlefield. Well, that's all I have to say about the Dread Werewolf. If you liked this video, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below with your thoughts on the build. I would love to hear any stories you have if you actually use this build in a game. Also, if you want to support an independent creator, please check out my Patreon page. Any donation goes a long way towards allowing me to work more on stuff like this and less time working elsewhere. Thank you all for watching, and keep forging on.